I'm going to share 4 tools that'll help you or someone you know avoid or reverse type 2 diabetes. These 4 tools have helped me reverse prediabetes, and so now I'd like to share these tools with you. Even if you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic, you'll want to continue watching because I'm going to show you how prediabetes and diabetes are just different terms for the same underlying condition. Because diabetes isn't the problem. It's the wall you hit by not addressing the actual problem. And most people worldwide have this problem, with as many as 90% of adults in the US alone. That problem is insulin resistance. May Allah reward you for being curious. Let's tie our camel. The first tool is understanding your blood glucose test. Anytime you get a routine blood test with your doctor, one of the tests they include is your blood glucose test. This shows your blood sugar values in milligrams of sugar per deciliter or millimoles of sugar per liter of blood. In general, we're told that less than 100 milligrams per deciliter is normal, 101 to 125 milligrams per deciliter is diagnosed as prediabetes, and 126 milligrams per deciliter or higher on 2 separate tests is diagnosed as diabetes. Then you have the HbA1c or A1c blood test, which shows your average blood sugar level for the past 2 to 3 months, where below 5.7% is normal, between 5.7 and 6.4% is diagnosed as prediabetes, and 6.5% or higher on 2 separate tests indicates diabetes. Understanding these levels is important to see where you stand when using the other tools. It shows you the urgency of fixing your situation. So let's say your blood glucose test shows you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. In that case, it means you've had insulin resistance, also known as metabolic syndrome, for a while and need to take drastic measures to start going in the other direction. Because as you'll see with the next tool, these readings don't show the whole picture. In fact, going by my own blood glucose levels alone is what led me to prediabetes. The second tool is understanding insulin resistance. The most important thing to know about insulin resistance is that it can start decades before it shows up on your blood glucose test as prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. I've made type 2 diabetes the main topic for this get-together because when someone has type 2 diabetes, they're at a hugely increased risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, blindness, nerve damage, amputation, and chronic infections. And it all started with insulin resistance. So even if you haven't been diagnosed as pre-diabetic or diabetic, you could be well on your way without even knowing it. Imagine insulin resistance as a dark highway that leads to a wall, with that wall being type 2 diabetes. Exits are all along the way, but we don't see them because we're driving without headlights. If we want to turn our headlights on and take an exit, avoiding the wall, we'll need to ask our doctor for a specific blood test that I'm almost certain you haven't had before. He or she will likely say you don't need it, but insist on it. This test is the most important blood test for detecting insulin resistance, so you can take the steps necessary to avoid or reverse type 2 diabetes. And that test is the fasting insulin test. This test will show if you have hyperinsulinemia, a chronically high baseline of insulin, which causes certain cells in your body to resist the insulin needed to pull glucose or blood sugar out of your blood and into the cells for energy. Insulin is a powerful peptide hormone that likes nothing more than making cells grow. It's also responsible for energy, either using it or storing it. Normally, when we haven't eaten for a few hours, our insulin levels are low, causing fat cells to release fat. When we eat meals containing carbohydrates or starches, our insulin levels go up, signaling the fat cells to stop releasing fat. Now, there are 2 main types of fat. There's visceral fat and subcutaneous fat. Visceral fat is the fat that is stored under the abdominal muscles and the thoracic region. This is the most dangerous type of fat because it forms around the organs and the intestines. We all get a certain number of these cells as we mature to around the age 25. After that, the number is set for the most part. After that point, any excess glucose that gets stored causes visceral fat to grow. This is why you can't assume that someone doesn't have insulin resistance just because they're thin. One of the signs of visceral fat growth is that your stomach will distend, kind of pushing outward. Subcutaneous fat is fat cells that multiply when there's excess glucose. This is the jiggly fat on the outside of the body beneath the skin, and fortunately, this type of fat is benign and non-problematic. Someone may not fit into their 5-year-old thobe or abaya anymore, but in terms of health, it's harmless. That's why 20% of people with obesity in the US are perfectly healthy. There's even a medical term called metabolically healthy obese, or MHO. If this is you or someone you know, don't get too excited. As the subcutaneous fat on the outside reaches maximum potential, because we can't grow forever, the visceral fat on the inside will start to grow, taking you into the deep end. So be sure to request a fasting insulin test the next time you see your doctor. The third tool is knowing how to reverse insulin resistance to restore insulin sensitivity and metabolic health. After learning about tool number 2, understanding insulin resistance and how the chronic elevation of insulin causes type 2 diabetes, can you guess how we can reverse it? That's right, lowering our fasting insulin baseline to normal levels, regaining insulin sensitivity. Can you now see how insulin therapy is problematic? It's providing more insulin, making matters worse. This is why the medication dose increases over time. It causes a person to become more and more insulin resistant. It's like someone constantly knocking on your door and you eventually start ignoring them. And then they get the idea, I know what'll get him or her to answer the door. More people knocking. It makes no sense. So how do we reverse it? How do we get them to stop knocking long enough so we start answering the door again? By keeping insulin levels low until the insulin resistant cells regain insulin sensitivity. You can do this in 4 ways, even combining or alternating between them. Number 1 is a low-carb diet. There are many types of low-carb diets, but what they all have in common is that they're all high-fat, moderate to high-protein, low-carbohydrate diets. This will keep insulin levels low and get your body into ketosis, where it uses fat and ketones as its primary energy source instead of glucose. Some have reversed their type 2 diabetes in as little as 3 weeks. SubhanAllah. You can learn more about the keto diet in my video, The Ketogenic Diet for Muslims. I put a link in the description below. There's also the carnivore diet, which I recommend if you can cut out carbs cold turkey. This is the fastest way to get your body fat adapted and insulin sensitive. It's also important if you find that you're addicted to carbohydrates. If that's the case, you may do better with abstinence, because if you're addicted and use food as a way to self-medicate stress or trauma, and you're trying to eat low carb, it's like an alcoholic trying to become sober by drinking only a little bit of alcohol. It's a very slippery slope. I'll be doing a video soon on how I can finally stick to a proper diet. Number 2, intermittent fasting. This type of fasting involves eating only within a specific time window. During this fast, you can drink water, tea, and coffee without sugar, but your eating window is limited. It's not dry fasting like we do in Ramadan, so fasting daily for long term is okay. My video, The Ketogenic Diet for Muslims, which I mentioned, also provides more information on intermittent fasting. It's another powerful way to become fat adapted and regain insulin sensitivity quickly, especially when it's paired with a low-carb diet or carnivore. Number 3 is resistance training. Muscles utilize a lot of glucose, so building and maintaining muscle is very important for regulating blood sugar and overall health. Gaining muscle also increases your metabolism, causing you to burn more calories at rest. And don't think that lifting weights will cause you to look like a bodybuilder. I hear this a lot, and my family hears this a lot from her friends when she tells them to lift weights. When they hear this, they say, well, I don't want big muscles. Don't worry, you'll never look like a bodybuilder or have big muscles unless you're specifically training to do so and take some kind of hormone therapy. So fear not, the goal is primarily to retain muscle as we age. Even if you gain some muscle, it won't be as much as you think. So sisters, you don't have to worry about lifting weights and getting big muscles and having the masjid ask you to do security. And do whatever you can consistently. If you can't get to the gym, do push-ups, sit-ups, and air squats to get started. You can also walk uphill backwards, which works the muscles in the front of your legs and strengthens the knees. Just keep in mind, this is paired with a low-carb diet. You can't outrun a bad diet. Exercise alone won't help you in the long run. You'll lose some weight at first, but eventually gain it all back and then some. This is one of the reasons why so many people try to lose weight and fail. So why even do exercise? Because it's very good for improving our mood and energy. For me, it helps clear my head, eliminate cravings, and relax overall. The last tool, and which I think is the most important tool, is hope, optimism, and patience. Without this, you won't even try, or you'll try and quit. Our DNS, dopamine, nafs, and shaitan, don't want us to succeed and thrive. So it'll cause us to get emotionally attached to a diet that fits with our DNS, which is usually processed food, because it lights up the pleasure centers of our brain like an illicit drug. Many people are now acknowledging UPF addiction, or ultra-processed food addiction. This is a thing. Now, do you have to do low carb or carnivore for the rest of your life? No. Once you've used these tools and improved your health, meaning you've regained insulin sensitivity, you can reintroduce other real food options without stressing about elevated blood sugar. What I do is apply the 4 tools, then check my fasting insulin levels every few months or so. I did this previously until it was down to normal. As far as getting fat adapted is concerned, you'll know you're fat adapted when you can eat a low-carb meal and not feel hungry for several hours because your body's getting its calories from stored body fat. If you're currently taking an insulin medication, this is very important. Be sure to work with your doctor to let them know that you want to start a low-carb diet. That's because you'll drive your blood sugar too low with the medication because you're no longer eating carbs, which can be life-threatening. So work with your doctor, wean off the medication, track your blood sugar while on the new diet, and lower insulin medication accordingly. Inshallah, please share this with others so they can benefit. Again, I was able to reverse my insulin resistance, which in turn reversed my prediabetes and cured a debilitating bout with anxiety and panic disorder that I had for many years. Comment below if you have any questions or want to let me know how you're doing on your journey. For more information on insulin resistance, check out my video Beyond Blood Sugar. You can also watch my videos on addiction if you find it impossible to give up carbs. You can also subscribe and click the bell so that you're notified when I upload my next video on how I currently stick to a real food diet. Until next time, may Allah reward you for being curious and keep tying your camel. As-salamu alaykum.